In today's episode, we are going to be discussing pitch decks and a comprehensive guide for startups in terms of best practices for creating a pitch deck. In this episode, I'm going to discuss what the essence of a pitch deck is, what are the advantages of a pitch deck, and some of the kind of best practices for crafting the perfect pitch deck to have what I call a perfect pitch deck. Now, as a startup consultant, entrepreneur, and attorney myself, who's helped a lot of clients with a lot of pitch decks and have seen a lot of pitch decks, I can tell you one of the first things that your pitch deck can potentially do is kill a deal for you if you're doing it wrong. Now, of course, there's no technical right or wrong way to create a pitch deck, but there are certain best practices that an experienced investor is accustomed to. Welcome to another exciting episode of Tip Top Startups, the podcast where we teach first-time entrepreneurs how to think like a lawyer and an investor during their journey as an entrepreneur and inventor. I am your host, David Nima. I am one of the top trademark and technology attorneys in the United States. I've been in practice since 2007, and I'm also the author of the book Tip Top Trademarks and Tip Top Startups, now available on Amazon. A pitch deck is a term that is commonly used in business circles, especially startup circles, and essentially it's a slideshow presentation. It can be a PowerPoint or some other Google Slides, for example. It's a quick slideshow showing anybody the core elements of a technology startup in a very quick fashion. Okay, so it's almost like a marketing product that is designed for people like investors and potentially other people on your team, early team members or co-founders, just so that you guys can be all on the same page, so to speak, in terms of the critical components of this new business venture that hasn't been created yet. It's all on paper so far. A pitch deck essentially captures the vision and the strategy behind the business and communicates that in a quick, effective manner. I think what you want to do is potentially do some Google searching for famous tech startups that you're familiar with and their pitch decks to see if you can find their pitch decks online. And that could be one place that can guide you in terms of what a good pitch deck looks like. For example, some of the most famous pitch decks that are discussed by a lot of tech entrepreneurs and consultants and attorneys and investors are the pitch decks for Airbnb in 2008 and Uber in 2009. Both of these companies use these pitch decks that are now available online, and you can do a Google search for them, to raise substantial amount of startup financing. So a pitch deck is not as complex as it may seem to you. It's a quick slideshow presentation communicating the core vision and critical components of a business. And like I said, some of the advantages of a pitch deck are it'll be one of the first documents that any investor will ask from you to review. And it could be a good document to help you get your fellow co-founders and other key vendors on the same page in terms of the critical components of a business. And furthermore, it can serve as a foundational document or setting the stage for your marketing as you go about and create a website and a social media marketing strategy. Some of the components of the pitch deck, more specifically the features and benefits and some of the marketing discussions on the pitch deck, will be serving as a foundation or setting the stage for your actual marketing that you're going to be doing. So there's substantial advantages to creating a pitch deck, and in some cases it's necessary, such as when, for example, you want to be raising money from investors. So let's now talk about some of the critical components that you need to incorporate into your pitch deck to have what I call a perfect pitch deck. Now, as a startup consultant, entrepreneur, and attorney myself, who's helped a lot of clients with a lot of pitch decks and have seen a lot of pitch decks, I can tell you one of the first things that your pitch deck can potentially do is kill a deal for you if you're doing it wrong. Now, of course, there's no technical right or wrong way to create a pitch deck, but there are certain best practices that an experienced investor is accustomed to. And you want to be speaking the investor's language when you're preparing a pitch deck for that investor. So there's certain do's and don'ts in a pitch deck that are relatively universal. And there's certain mistakes that can potentially kind of lead an investor to think of it as a red flag if you make certain mistakes in the pitch deck. So I want to talk about that in this portion of the video. For example, one of the things that you absolutely do not want to do on a pitch deck is have too many words on one slide, okay? You don't want to have too many words on one slide. You want to look at each slide as almost like a billboard, right? Think about all the billboards that you see driving down the street and how many words are on each billboard. There's not that many words on a billboard. And that's just so that they can communicate an idea quickly. So you don't have too much space to work with. You got to be very succinct and very brief in your pitch deck. And no slide should have, hundreds of words on it. Okay, each slide should be about the size of a tweet. Some people say the font size should be somewhere around 24 to 44 in terms of the font size. You gotta have using big font, big word, and just a few amount of words to communicate each critical component or each message on each slide. So no super busy slides. Okay, now we have the next issue is the number of slides. Now, you might be thinking, okay, no problem. I'm going to just take all the information from one slide and I'm going to span it over numerous slides. Yes, you can do that, but there is a kind of an informal cap in terms of how long or how many slides a pitch deck should have. You're looking at roughly somewhere between 13 to 26 slides is the magic number in terms of how long a pitch deck should be in terms of the number of slides. Now, one of those slides in the beginning will be your title page. The last slide should be kind of your title page with your contact information there. So you got two slides right there that are just going to be kind of the first title and the end title. And in between that, you have about, like I said, 12 to 20 slides to which you can communicate your product and your business plan in a pitch deck, not using too many words on each slide. The other thing that you want to think about when presenting a pitch deck in terms of do's and don'ts is to not disclose every single component of your business in the pitch deck. There's a few reasons for this. Confidentiality can be one of it. Relevance can be the other. But the real kind of more psychological benefit here is that you want to leave the reader or the audience interested, but you want them to want to know a little bit more. You want to create a little bit of intrigue there. And you want to provide a reason for that investor to follow up with you, ask you a follow-up question. So I'm not saying to kind of hide the ball in terms of certain information, but I think you want to create that level of intrigue and set the stage for next steps in your discussion with an investor using the pitch deck as a foundational document to capture their interest. Lastly, I do suggest to consult with an experienced attorney and consultant like myself before creating a pitch deck and presenting it to an investor. Now, there's a couple of reasons for this. Some of it is what I discussed in this video, such as making sure the slides are appropriate, they're not too long, you're covering all the critical elements of a pitch deck, which I discussed in Chapter 2 of Tip Top Startups in terms of the pitch deck elements or the slide titles that you need to cover in the roughly 12 to 24 slides that you're going to be working with. But the other part of it is that you want to kind of make sure that your legal due diligence action plan is also taken care of. You're not going to be discussing too much legal in the pitch deck, but if you're discussing terms with an investor, you want to make sure your legal due diligence is taken care of in terms of your company formation, your intellectual property protection, any kind of contracts that are critical for you to have properly drafted and signed before going into the next phase. So the investor is going to want to know that you've actually kind of started some of this legal due diligence as well. And that's why there's a kind of a triple advantage here to consulting with an attorney and consultant, because you have an ability to not only kind of get a purview on your legal due diligence and start doing your due diligence on that front, but also that attorney, hopefully, if they have experience in technology startup consulting, can also consult you on your pitch deck and give you an advantage going into the pitch deck creation phase. So that's been a little bit about creating the perfect pitch deck for technology startups. If you want to discuss your pitch deck and your startup funding and business planning strategy with me, contact me through some of the links around this video or find me online, and I'll be happy to discuss it with you. This is David Nima, host of the podcast Tip Top Startups, and I will see you all in the next video.